Hi, beautiful people. Welcome to the Fort Salem Library, where we read you your fanfiction. So sit down or don't, relax or don't, and enjoy these stories in a way you have not before. We at Fort Salem Library do not own Motherland Fort Salem or any of the related characters. The Motherland Fort Salem series is created by Elliot Lawrence and owned by Freeform. This story is a work of fanfiction and is meant for entertainment only. We are not making any profit from these stories. All rights of the original Motherland Fort Salem story belong to Freeform. We also do not own Not Like This or any of its original characters and storylines. We did, however, get permission from the author to read their story. This story was created and written by Silver_Cleo, and you can find a link in our show notes. This story is being read to you by me, Britt. Not Like This. The air was thick in her lungs, enveloped in fear, as she puts the phone down. An execution of an American witch on American soil. The first in 326 years. The first since her sister Charlotte. The first since hers failed. The first since she had to watch her sister hang. And it was not just an execution of a nobody. It was the execution of her ex-lover, the leader of the spree. The execution of Nick de Batan. The very woman who swore that she would see Sarah dead before giving up her fight to liberate witches. The woman who was currently sitting with a muting collar in the dungeon cell under the necropolis. Who had incinerated her interrogator and would only talk to Tally Craven. Who claimed to kill one civilian for every witch murdered in the armed services worldwide. Who had made several attempts on her life since deserting in Liberia all those decades ago. Execution to set an example to all the spree and dodgers. A public execution in front of her army, her sons and daughters, in front of the highest government officials, with no way to refuse, forced into a position to lead and destroy, she had to do it. And so she found herself 2 days later in her dress uniform, ready to carry out her last act as General Alder before being retired to live out the rest of her unnatural life. With no more biddies, the program retired. This execution was as much of a death sentence for herself as it was for Nick de Batan. Walking into the crowded hangar, filled stands holding the portion of her army that was unlucky enough to be on base, a stage holding the new leader of the army, General Petra Bellwether and her daughter, Captain Anacostia Quartermain alongside the president and other heads of departments in both the army and government. Steps calm and measured, heart rate anything but. The crowd staring down, hundreds of eyes watching her, only 14 comforting locked gazes onto her back. Her biddies would always stand beside her, for it was them and only them that understood the decisions she had to make, the choices that were available. It was the biddies who were the only witches who understood the true reason behind the creation of the Accords. Accords created after they couldn't kill her. Her voice too strong to be subdued by a loop of a robe. We are gathered here to witness the execution of Nick de Batan, leader of the spree, mass murderer, deserter, she called out, turning at the stage to face the woman bound to the stake. Nick de Batan will meet the goddess with 3 strikes. Death by scourge, the worst method of execution. The first 2 strikes slashing and cauterizing instantly. The third stroke the killing blow. Nicta would bleed to death, both internally and externally. She moved to make the first strike, to begin her ending. To complete the task that had started a 326-year-long fight. Execution. Head clear for the first time in years, blood pumping, sound quieted. There was only this moment, and then it would all be over. She would be able to transition out and take whatever the goddess decided for her when she died. Please find the fanfiction you just listened to on Archive of Our Own and leave the author some love. Without them, this wouldn't be possible, and we want to thank them from the bottoms of our hearts for creating these amazing stories and keeping the show alive.